The Magic Presence. Chapter 11. The True Messenger of Divine Service. Late one afternoon we were returning with Electra from a drive along the shore of the Mediterranean, and had just entered the door of her home when a sealed letter dropped at Rex's feet. He picked it up and, opening it, read, "My beloved children, leave tomorrow morning for India. All is in readiness, and we are happy to welcome you. Saint Germain." Our host of the yacht had not been with us during our sightseeing trip in Alexandria, but when we arrived at the pier he greeted us joyously with the news that we had been assured of a calm, delightful voyage. We again passed through the Red Sea as we sped swiftly on our way to one of the greatest centers of spiritual light and power on this planet. Leto continued her instruction during the entire trip at Saint Germain's request, that Bob and Rex might reach the point where they could come and go from the physical body, consciously and at will. By the 5th day of our journey, they had become quite proficient, and, like most young people, wanted to experiment often in using their newly evolved powers. This Leto would not permit. There must be a very great sense of spiritual honor and integrity, she explained, in regard to the use of these mighty powers of the I Am Presence. For the great law of being does not permit them to be brought into our outer use except where it is for the accomplishment of permanent good. We must be aware at all times that whenever we use the life, substance, and power of this universe for the mere gratification or pleasure of the senses, only misery and destruction can be the result. The mighty I Am Presence works ceaselessly to build, release, express, and constantly expand perfection in all its creative activity, and permanently maintain love, peace, and constant service to all. If the sensations of the body and the outer activity of the mind are permitted to run riot and interfere with the divine life plan of the individual, disaster and failure are the result. The true student of light never uses his powers for the amusement and gratification of the senses, for exploitation of anyone's personality, nor to make money by producing phenomena. The ascended master's way of life is to give, give, give. First, love and adoration to his own mighty I Am Presence, and then expand love and perfection by pouring it out to everybody and everything. To send out divine love without limit all the time is the whole of the law applied. If mankind could only understand this, the individual would realize that he must pour out this flame of divine love before the perfection which he desires can flow into his world and release things into his use. Divine love is a feeling, an actual ray of light which flows out from the flame within the heart. It can be sent forth so powerfully that this ray of light substance is both visible and tangible. It is the most invincible power of the universe. Use it, beloved ones, without limit, and nothing is impossible to you. By temperament and training, Leto was a calm, sweet, marvelously poised teacher, but we were amazed at the power she could release when she wished to impress a certain understanding of the law upon our consciousness. She was not accustomed to the boyish pranks of Bob and Rex, but she soon made it unmistakably plain to us all that no boyish pranks played any part in the operation of these great cosmic laws. The cosmic law acts, she continued, wherever the thoughts and feelings direct and qualify the energy, and it is no respecter of persons, places, conditions, things, motives, ignorance, nor knowledge, any more than is a current of electricity running through a motor or dynamo. If you turn on the power, it acts according to the direction given it. This is a point that many students do not seem to comprehend or do not wish to take the responsibility for. But the truth of the law is the only thing with which we are concerned. Our work is to put the exact truth of the law before humanity. If they refuse to understand and obey it, then their suffering must increase until the human side breaks its shell of obstinacy and selfishness and lets the mighty presence of the I Am control all, according to the perfection of life. Therefore, never joke in thought, feeling, or the spoken word about the powers of the Godhead, for to do so without exception draws heart-breaking experiences into your world. Therefore, govern your outer moods with an inflexible will whenever you use the powers of the mighty I Am Presence. In order to manifest the greater expressions of the I Am Presence, the individual must become aware of and feel that present within himself, and know that the very life energy which beats his heart and breathes through his lungs is constantly flowing into his physical body from his electronic body. His electronic body is projected into space from the very heart center of the cosmic life of the universe, which you have heard us refer to as the great central sun. This pure life energy flowing ceaselessly into the mind and body of the individual is the triune activity of the Supreme, acting everywhere throughout infinity. It is intelligence, substance, and energy, the one universal light out of which comes all manifestation. It is subject at all times to the conscious direction and use of the individual with self-conscious, individualized free will. The minerals, plants, and animals do not have the control of this activity, for only the flame of the Godhead is endowed with self-directing free will. The more attention one gives the mighty I Am Presence, the more he will learn of the vast realms of wisdom that stretch before him. The more he realizes the immense responsibility and limitless opportunity that are his, the more should he ask the mighty I Am Presence within his own heart to teach him all things. If one wants wisdom, he must turn his attention to the only source of wisdom, the mighty I Am Presence. Only by acknowledging the I Am can the first impulse be given which releases its wisdom into the outer use of the individual. It is by acknowledgement that the first wave flows forth to release it into the physical activity. Otherwise it remains forever quiescent within the consciousness of the I Am. The release of it can only come at the command of the self-directing will of the flame of God. Learn to call forth these God attributes and activities from the very heart of the universe, and then use them in love to bless all mankind. If you will do this, there is no height you cannot attain, and no gift you can ask of life that life will not release to you, when you understand what part of you says, I am, and you are willing to use all to bless life everywhere with love. Use the understanding of the I Am Presence that you now have, and persist in loving and blessing life everywhere, and you will open wide the floodgates to freedom, the realms and activities of the limitless, the natural world and life of the ascended masters. Use the wisdom you now have, and more will come, as surely as your heart beats and your mind thinks. At dinner on the evening of the 7th day of the voyage, our host announced that we were to reach Bombay late the next evening, but we were to remain aboard until the following morning. Bombay is one of the most beautiful harbors in the world, and as our yacht came alongside the pier, we were greeted by the Indian master, Shananda, to whom we were presented by our host. We drove to the railroad station, where we were conducted to a private car, every convenience being provided for us until we reached our destination. It was here only that the outline of our stay in India was given. First, we were to go to Calcutta and remain there 2 days while certain work would be given. The trip to Calcutta was delightful, and although the days were very warm outside, we were not aware of it in the train. We passed many places of great scenic beauty, and shortly after leaving Bombay, we missed Bob. We started a search for him, and as we entered his compartment, realized he had left his body. Leto warned us immediately. "Do not touch his body," she said, "for he has gone with the Master Shananda." For a few moments Nada had a hard struggle to command herself and keep at peace, for this was the first time Bob had gone forth from his body without previous preparation. However, she soon controlled her feelings and became at peace. In about 2 hours, Bob came walking into the observation car in which we had all gathered. He was as serene as could be, but the rest of us immediately asked concerning his experiences, and of course wanted to know where he had been. We could get him to reveal nothing, and finally he said, "Each of us is to keep his experience strictly within his own consciousness until the end of our destination, and then we are to compare notes." That afternoon Nod and Pearl were gone about 2 hours. The next morning Rex and I left our bodies. Each of us had experienced practically the same things, for we were being trained in accurate observation. Shri Singh, the brother who had taken Shananda's place, was delighted in every way, but very silent. Yet when he did talk, it was always for some very definite purpose. The day we arrived in Calcutta, Shananda reappeared to us, and when we had become seated at dinner, with his magic radiant smile, remarked, "I congratulate each of you on the fearless way in which you are able to leave your bodies and go forth strong and free. It means great enlightenment for all, as well as the entering into a tremendous field of service. Leto, my sister, you are a most efficient instructor, and your work with these students is remarkably well done. It is only in this freedom, my friends, that you are permitted to know, feel, and experience the full use of the cosmic rays. You are now in a position to receive the full benefit of your training with us." Electra and our host of the yacht were silent, but very careful observers of all that had taken place, and were no doubt being trained in the same way. We felt keenly the intensity and power of the instruction, for everything we did had a definite objective and purpose. We arrived in Calcutta and drove rapidly for about half an hour, finally coming to a stop in front of a beautiful building situated upon a prominence in which was evidently the... After the meeting, we were presented to all the members and spent a delightful social hour. We motored back to our private car and found it had been run out on a spur of track into surroundings that looked like a flower garden, with a beautiful fountain playing just outside the windows where we dined. We commented on the ability of Shananda to have the beautiful always expressed to us, and with one of his smiles that ever gave one the sense of sunshine, he replied, "It is really much easier to express the beautiful, because it is natural, and the true expression of the mighty I Am presence within everyone. When anyone truly accepts this glorious presence, and feels it as the Godhead doing all things through and for him, the rest of his activity must conform to its marvelous beauty and perfection. the full acceptance of the mighty I Am Presence by the individual always commands and governs all outer experience harmoniously. It is only when one truly and fully accepts this glorious God presence within himself that he becomes a true messenger for divine service. Then, as the perfection of the mighty I Am Presence begins to be released in a greater degree through the outer activity, all the courage and assurance comes through, for at last the personal self sees and feels the mighty inner presence, knowing its full power, majesty, and mastery. The next day we were taken to one of the ancient temples, in whose subterranean chambers is going on a work undreamed of by the outer world. That night at dinner, Shananda told us we were to leave for Darjeeling early in the morning, and that we were to eat breakfast en route. The scenery was gorgeous, and the sensation of watching the giant snow-capped mountains come closer and closer as we gradually climbed in altitude was fascinating. But we soon began to feel the change, for we had risen more than 7,000 feet. We arrived at the top of our climb just in time to see a glorious sunset in a very clear atmosphere. In the distance, we could see Mount Everest and the other famous peaks of that glorious range. The majesty, towering presence of these mountains and the mystery of the ages that shrouded their past made us all feel a deeper longing than ever to reach to the inmost heart of the great eternal wisdom, to feel ourselves a part of it, and to be able to pour forth its blessings to all mankind, that they might be happy also. "I want you to stay here tonight," said Shananda, "and see the sunrise from this particular spot, as it will be many years before we shall see it again in cooperation with a certain cosmic activity that is taking place at this time. It is the first time in 70 years that these two activities occur simultaneously." At 3 o'clock we arose and mounted our little ponies, which took us still higher up the mountain to a point where we could see the sunrise to best advantage. We reached this place just as its radiance began to grow brighter. In a few seconds great rays of light of every conceivable color began to shoot into the sky, and continued for fully 10 minutes. It was as if light itself rejoiced in the mighty presence of life. Then, as the great golden disk came into view, a quivering, sparkling radiance pierced our flesh and penetrated into the very centers of our bodies. Never before had we experienced any such sensation from sunlight. The vivifying effect lasted for hours, and the glorious feeling, the beauty of the scene left with us, still floods over me as I recall the experience. One knows, after such an occurrence, that the mighty master intelligence of the universe is still at the helm, and guides the destinies of our earth and humanity, notwithstanding all outer appearances of chaos to the contrary. "You have felt within your bodies," said Shananda, "a slight action of the mighty cosmic rays that have been directed to earth at the present time by great cosmic masters who are giving transcendent assistance in this cycle to humanity in its outer struggle. Their outpouring is a radiance of love, courage, and strength to the race that sustains the individual during this period of change, and so illumines his inner bodies that it enables the mighty I Am Presence to release more of its perfection into and through the outer self. Those of you who are to receive training in the use of these rays will be enabled to focus great streams of light essence and consciously direct them, pouring forth blessings to mankind through great currents of healing power and harmonizing streams of love. Few are ready to be taught how to control and use these mighty rays, but all for whom it is possible are being prepared now. These great streams of condensed light and pure substance can be drawn, qualified, and sent forth again to produce a definite result, as easily as a searchlight reveals the scenes it passes over. Come now, we must return and go to the home of the chief of the Council of Darjeeling. We went back to our ponies, which took us to Darjeeling, and thence we were driven by auto to a beautiful home built upon one of the lovely hills surrounding the city. The grounds were filled with stately trees, and the view over the country that lay below us was one of the most beautiful on earth. We were ushered in and presented to the head of this branch of the Great White Brotherhood. He was a tall, handsome man, with piercing dark eyes that seemed to look clear through one, but when there was no intense feeling being expressed, they were as soft as those of a fawn. To our surprise, he did not wear a turban, but his soft, beautiful dark brown hair waved slightly and fell to his shoulders. He was very gracious, and gave us a most loving welcome. Glorious peace clothed him and his surroundings, filling the entire place with his wonderful radiance. He inquired about our trip, asked if we had enjoyed the sunrise from the mountain, and invited us to dine with him that evening. He talked very freely and told us many wonderful things about India. He repeated for our enjoyment many legends about the Himalayan mountains, and one in particular about the holy caves within the heart of this mighty range. His discourse was fascinating and instructive beyond words. Some of these caves, he said, you shall see while you are in India, for I know you are interested in the ancient records of mankind, and in one of them the most ancient records upon this earth are still held in safekeeping. These records are not brought forth into the use of the outer world at the present time because of the lack of spiritual growth and understanding of the people. The race has a restlessness and critical feeling that is a very destructive activity, and these feelings find vent through fanatics of various kinds, whose understanding of life and this magnificent universe is so narrow and childish that they seek to destroy whatever does not agree with their own petty notions of what has been or ought to be the infinite plan of creation. It is this misguided, selfish ignorance in mankind that has been responsible for all inharmony down the ages, for the destruction of records that would throw light upon humanity's many problems. It was this unbridled, vicious feeling that destroyed the wonderful library at Alexandria and the marvelous records of the Incan civilization. Yet, notwithstanding these former losses, the ascended masters of the Great White Brotherhood have always foreseen such destructive impulses, and have withdrawn all important records of every civilization and preserved them, then left the less important to be destroyed by the vicious impulse of the Vandals. One day, when humanity is prepared for it, and it is positively safe for these records to be given to the outer world, there will appear in a central location a marvelous library, not made by hands, where these records will be available, and those in the outer world who have received the necessary credentials may see them. When mankind becomes enlightened enough to cease generating the vicious destruction it has been expressing up to the present time, this will be done. Mankind, through its irritated, destructive feeling and powerful thought force, has peopled the visible and invisible with thought forms of intense passion, hatred, fear, and destruction. These fasten themselves upon the human beings that generated them, and also upon others who, because they have a similar feeling, open themselves to this malignant force. Humanity has almost no understanding of what happens when the personal self sends out a feeling of irritation, anger, hate, envy, jealousy, criticism, or condemnation. The feeling side of human nature is the feminine activity of consciousness within every individual. The thought is the masculine activity of the mind. A thought never becomes dynamic in the outer life, until it passes through the feeling body. The feeling condenses upon the thought pattern the atomic substance of the outer activity of life. In thus passing through the feeling body, the thought becomes clothed and thereafter exists as a separate living thing outside of the individual's mind. There have been platitudes by the million, written and preached about divine love being the law of life. But who knows how to generate the feeling of divine love consciously and at will to a limitless degree, and put it in the place of irritation, hate, etc., as a wave of actual force and substance in one's own emotional body? Such a thing is not only possible, but must be done, if human beings are to stop suffering and express perfection. The personality cannot be permanently harmonious, except it be kept filled with divine love, consciously generated. If mental statements of the law of life and prayers were the way to perfection, happiness, and freedom, the number of sermons preached on this earth should have perfected and illumined 100 planets long before this. If prayers, which by the way are generally a series of I wants or O Lord give us, were the way to freedom from limitation, the prayers that have been uttered in this world should have perfected a dozen humanities. I do not say that prayers have not brought good. They have. But prayer should be a quieting of the intellect and a stilling of the feelings, that the personality might feel the outpouring of the mighty I Am Presence and receive the response from within. Prayer should be an outpouring of love and gratitude to the Presence for the limitless opportunities and good contained within life. The outer world likes to flatter its vanity by the feeling that it has the ability to accomplish great things. But so far as the control and perfection of the feelings are concerned, the outer world is still in a savage state. Human beings sting others as well as themselves through vicious feelings just as surely as does the scorpion. The predominant feeling in our modern world is terrifically vicious when personalities are opposing and criticizing those who disagree with them. So-called civilized people commit murder every day of the week through sending out angry and irritated feelings that kill the higher impulses in others. It is the feeling of the race that needs to be redeemed and saved from its own self-generated destruction. Until the individual understands the need of self-control in regard to his feelings in the waking consciousness, it is impossible to maintain any permanent forward movement of a constructive nature. All accomplishment that is not attained through the feeling of divine love is but temporary, for divine love alone is the way to permanent perfection. It is pitiful to see how, for centuries, the human race has occupied its time and used its energy to build up things through thought, and at the same time tear its creation to pieces by inharmonious feelings. It is childish, and is a stubborn refusal to fulfill the eternal plan of perfection. The hour is at hand when the great cosmic law which governs this system of worlds is releasing a tremendous expansion of the light of the mighty I Am Presence throughout our group of planets, and whatever cannot accept the power of that light is consumed thereby. So mankind need no longer fool itself with the idea that it can continue to generate destructive feelings and survive. The end of the former dispensation has come, and all things are made new. Let him who runs read, that he may learn the way of light, while there is yet time. There is no evil anywhere on this earth or any other, except that which human beings have generated themselves sometime, somewhere. Most of it has been done through ignorance, but a great deal has been done willfully by those who ought to know better and who are fully aware of their wrongdoing. The individual who uses his intellect to foster destructive activities in the new cycle into which we have recently entered must face his own destruction, for its recoil is inevitable. It will be swift and definite, for the present activity is expressing such speed that the recoil is many times only a matter of hours, weeks, or months at most, where heretofore it has been a matter of years. The ascended masters work ceaselessly to have humanity understand and see this, and the work of our messengers is to get this truth into the consciousness of mankind as clearly as possible. It is now nearly dinner time. Attendants will show you to your quarters. After refreshing yourselves, return here and we shall dine. Later, dinner was announced by beautiful chimes. Our host offered his arm to Nada and led the way into a magnificent banquet hall which must have seated fully 500 people. "This is really our council chamber," he explained. "Later this evening all the members of the Darjeeling Council will assemble here." We enjoyed a most delicious dinner while our host entertained us with an endless fund of information. As we were leaving, he asked to be excused as he had work to do before the Our host, said Shananda, in whose care he had left us, is a brother of great wisdom and power, but the very embodiment of gentleness and kindness. At 9 o'clock he returned, and offering his arm to Leto, led the way into the council chamber, where 200 members of the Great White Brotherhood had already assembled. He took his place at the head of the main table, and seated half of our group on his right and the other half on his left. He called the meeting to order, and their work began. We were thrilled again and again as we listened to the solution of many important world problems, especially some of those which were holding the attention of Europe at the moment. He then assigned certain duties to many of the brothers. The meeting adjourned, and we were presented individually to many of the members. We'd been enjoying the social activities for some few moments when I noticed that Rex was laboring under the strain of some intense excitement. He watched one of the members closely for some time, and then went quickly and boldly up to our host. He informed him there was a spy in the room, and pointed out the individual. For an instant, it seemed as if the power within the chief would crush him, but Rex was clothed in a divine dignity that never flinched. "That is a grave charge," said the chief. "It will require proof." At that moment, the man in question came up to Pearl and realized instantly that he was being watched. He reached into the folds of his robe, drew something forth, and raised it to his mouth. Pearl seized it as quick as a flash, and Bob, who stood near, with one leap, pinned the man's hands behind him in a grasp of steel. "Search him," said Pearl as our host stepped forward, and Rex, without waiting for authority from anyone, went through the spy's clothing like lightning. He found all the proof they needed of his activities as a spy. As the chief came forward and saw the name on the papers Rex handed him, he was surprised indeed, for the spy, who was an educated Afghan, had been sent into India by a government that breeds only destruction, and had ferreted his way into the outer ranks of this council to obtain information which he had been using against them. At a signal, one of the brothers stepped forward and led the spy from the room. "Brother Rex," said our host with a gracious smile, "you have served the cause of light well, and rendered our brotherhood a blessing of tremendous import. There has been a leak in some of our activities recently. Tell me, how did you become aware of his operations? He has been deceiving us very cleverly." "My attention," replied Rex, "was drawn to him by the inner power of my I Am Presence, and as I watched his eyes, I knew he was practicing some kind of deception. It all happened so quickly I hardly knew in the outer activity of my mind what was occurring. If it had not been for Pearl, my twin ray, we would have been too late. Outwardly, you three may not have known what it was all about, but the mighty presence of the I Am has acted with unerring decision. You see, my beloved ones, how the twin rays can act with the speed of lightning in perfect unison when the great inner presence is allowed to have full control. My sister and brother, he continued, as he extended his left hand to Pearl and his right one to Rex, you will be able to do splendid work for the mighty I Am Presence, the great white brotherhood and humanity, and I bless you for that service. What is to be done with the spy? Asked Pearl. The man knows what he must do, replied the chief. Let us forget it ever happened. We shall always remember your service to the brotherhood. By this time most of the guests had left, so we bade our host good-bye, for we were leaving Darjeeling in the morning. We did not stop again at Calcutta, but went directly through to Benares, the sacred city of the Hindus, and one of the oldest cities in India. As our private coach drew into the railway station, we became keenly aware of a sincere devotion in the very atmosphere of the place. Imagine our joy when almost the very first person we saw was our beloved friend Alexander Gaylord, who had arrived in Benares only a few hours before. Rex, Bob, and I made a dash for him as soon as the train stopped. When his friend, the owner of the yacht, came up to greet him, they looked into each other's eyes with a deep love and understanding born of centuries of association. As Leto, Gaylord's twin ray, approached, he extended his arms and held her close to his heart. Shananda then presented Electra. We are to be guests this evening of one of the oldest councils in India, he said. It is to be purely a spiritual feast, devoted entirely to the guests. All members of the order are to wear their seamless robes. I shall return for you at 6 o'clock. We returned to our compartment and prepared for the evening banquet. When Shananda returned, he was accompanied by his sister Nadja, a beautiful young girl, or at least so she appeared, to whom we were presented. We were driven to a beautiful building on an elevation overlooking the city. As we approached the entrance, involuntarily we expressed our joy at the beauty and exquisite surroundings of the scene we gazed upon. As we passed through the entrance, we entered a rotunda of pink marble, veined with soft green, in which there were 7 white marble pillars. The effect was warm, delicate, and very beautiful. Nadja led the way to the dressing rooms where we donned our seamless robes, and then conducted us toward a great arched doorway that opened at our approach, admitting us into a large, magnificent council chamber made entirely of white marble and elaborately decorated in gold. There were no lighting fixtures in the place, yet it was filled by a soft white light that was wonderful. This great hall seated fully 500 people, some 200 having already arrived. We are to be honored tonight by 3 divine guests, announced Shananda as he presented us to those assembled, and we took our seats. Let us meditate upon the great principle of life, the mighty I Am Presence, until music shall signal the close of our meditation. Presently, the soft tones of great bells stole gently upon the air, and as we raised our heads and I looked toward the head of the table, where the 3 vacant chairs had been, we could scarcely repress our exclamation of joy and surprise as we saw our beloved Saint Germain at the head of the table, on his left Nada Rayborn, and on his right Daniel. Everyone in the room rose in honor of these blessed beings as the guests of honor. Our impulse was to rush to them in greeting, so great was our joy, but something in each of us controlled all outer activity as we bowed low in quiet dignity and loving respect. I present to you our beloved brother of light, Saint Germain, said Shananda, addressing those assembled, and his 2 guests Nada and Daniel Rayborn, who raised their bodies as his students in America. Our sister raised her body after what to the outer world seemed death. Our brother Daniel accomplished his victory without coming to that point. At the close of this explanation, the light within and about Shenanda blazed forth in a dazzling radiance as he continued. Our blessed brother and honored guest, Saint Germain, will have full charge of the evening and will conduct the rest of the work. Saint Germain, in his usual loving dignity, bowed in acknowledgment of the greeting and replied, "We shall have a banquet tonight served from the cosmic kitchen. Many of you have heard of these activities, but have not seen nor experienced the actual manifestation. In the great cosmic treasure house surrounding you is an omnipresent substance from which is produced everything the heart desires. The beautiful banquet tables had jade tops, so no linen was supplied to cover their magnificence. Saint Germain asked all to bow their heads in loving acceptance of the great abundance and outpouring from the mighty I Am Presence. As he finished his acknowledgment to the source of all life, the service for the meal began to appear. The plates, cups, and saucers were made of pink china decorated with delicate moss roses. The silver knives, forks, and spoons had carved jade handles, and tumblers of carved jade, filled with a golden, sparkling nectar, appeared at the right hand of each guest. Then followed a tiny loaf of bread about 2 by 2 by 4 inches, appearing upon each plate. The food for each person came individually, as if it had been ordered separately, for everyone received that which he most desired until all were served abundantly and were satisfied. Next came many kinds of luscious fruit in great golden containers, and for dessert, a kind of fruit whip appeared in crystal dishes. The entire banquet was served without the clatter of a single dish, and at the close Saint Germain arose and addressed the guests. "The great ascended masters," he began, "have wanted you to see, know, and partake of food which is produced direct from the omnipresent cosmic substance. This substance is what has been explained to you as the pure electronic substance which fills infinity, and out of which all forms are created and all manifestation produced. This limitless substance about you everywhere is yours to manipulate, to mold into form without any limit whatsoever, when you hold close enough and sincerely enough, without interruption, to the mighty I Am Presence in you. This glorious angelic being and power, which is the real you, who is constantly pouring its energy into your physical brain and body, is God individualized at your point in the universe to mold this cosmic substance into whatever form you decree. To the human beings who do not or will not recognize the mighty I Am Presence, the use, joy, and freedom of this great bounty by direct precipitation remains unused, because their feeling of fear, doubt, hate, anger, selfishness, or lust builds an impassable wall around them, shutting out the power and perfection of the light which would otherwise come through. The great, all-wise creator of perfect form everywhere throughout space builds those forms according to the pattern of perfection, which is another name for the law of divine love. This always means the orderly, harmonious way of attraction. The feeling of doubt, fear, etc., is a rate of vibration which shatters form and scatters substance. Hence is diametrically opposed to love, harmony, and order. To the individual who acknowledges the mighty I Am Presence, takes a determined stand with it, and continually maintains a feeling of divine love in the personality, to him all that you have seen done tonight is possible of accomplishment, right now in this lifetime. This banquet has been given for your encouragement, enlightenment, and strength. The power of precipitation used here tonight is within every individual. I assure you it is no myth. Turn to your own mighty master within. This will enable you to acknowledge the I Am. Continually turn to it. that its mighty power may be released and the ascended Master Wisdom come forth, directing your every activity. Break down the self-created barriers that have bound you, and see what an avalanche of good the mighty I Am Present stands always ready to pour out into your use at your conscious command, when you charge your feelings with divine love and maintain order in the temple, your mind and body. Our good brother Daniel Rayborn has something which he wishes to tell you. As Rayborn arose, we felt a thrill pass through the whole room, and for more than 30 minutes he poured forth marvelous wisdom with a force that seemed to burn the very words into the consciousness of everyone. He spoke with a conviction that could only come from one who had more than human power. Shananda said a few words in praise and gratitude to our wonderful guests, asking them to be with us again soon. Saint Germain then arose and continued, "Most gracious host and friends," he began, "I wish to present the entire service used at this banquet to your council for future use. Observe." Instantly all the used service began reappearing on the tables as clean and fresh as if it had never been used. In the midst of this joyous experience, a beautiful vase of carved jade filled with wonderful pink roses appeared on. "This comes to you, our beloved friends," he continued, "with the love and blessings of the ascended host. May it ever be a fond memory to you all." Then with one word, dismissed, the banquet was over. As quickly as our dignity permitted, we hurried to greet our beloved Saint Germain, Nada and Daniel Rayborn. The parents held their children long in their loving embrace, Nada the mother holding Bob in her arms, and as she released him said, "My blessed children, I congratulate you for your love and devotion to the light. Your reward will be very great, for at the end of the 2-year period of your probation, a glorious surprise will await you. Until then, we shall see you often at your destination in India. We have work to do now, so I must say good night and God bless you." Then bowing to Shananda and Nadja, they disappeared with Saint Germain. We thanked our host for the wonderful evening, and it was then that he told us we were to leave early the next morning for our destination, as we had remained as long as the work permitted. We returned at once to our private car, and as Shananda bade us good night, gave directions to breakfast en route, saying that he would return before we reached Simla. We left at 7 o'clock the next morning, hoping to stop at Benares, Lucknow, Delhi, and Simla. We received direction to lose no time, but to go direct to our destination in the Himalayas, where we were to make our home for many months, and nothing else was really of importance but obedience to that command. Unless one is seeking the release of the light within himself, no one can fully understand and appreciate the feeling that nothing is really important but all of God and those experiences by which the light is released. Gaylord was to meet us at Benares on our way north and remain with us during the rest of our stay in India. The country we passed through was very beautiful. We discussed what modern equipment could do for India, and that through it she could become the garden spot of the world. Her countless rivers could make it into a perfect paradise, for India is beginning to feel her wings again, and her industries will rise once more. She will return to that majestic glory she has reached several times in her past, and regardless of the crushing influences that have preyed upon her in the last 200 or 300 years, India's great problem will yet be solved in perfect divine order. Her teeming millions will be given the opportunity to express the light and God presence that is within them. There is a great cosmic wheel of progress which affects our entire earth. It governs the expansion of the light in the entire system to which this planet belongs. When that wheel turns to a certain point, and it is nearer than mankind realizes, it will focus certain rays of energy upon the earth. Then the resistance to greater good that is set up by puny, selfish personalities and unawakened mentalities will be as chaff before a mighty wind. The efforts of those human beings will be useless, and they will be compelled to obey a power far greater than their own selfish cravings. The day passed quickly, and after dinner we gathered in Gaylord's compartment, asking him to tell us something of his own experiences. After considerable coaxing, and a promise on our part not to divulge what he revealed, he described briefly one of his embodiments in South America during the time of the Incan civilization. We listened spellbound for more than 3 hours to the experiences of that life, during which Leto was also in incarnation. In one part, we were so fascinated by his portrayal and had so entered into the activities with him that we were all in tears before we realized it. His narrative was one of the most thrilling to which I ever listened, and at the end he told us he had in his possession the ancient records in the Incan characters to prove the principal experiences of that life. These were of such an heroic nature, and because of the stand Leto and he had taken for the right in that life, the release of the light within both of them was revealing its freedom now. The next morning Shananda greeted us and explained that he had made arrangements to take us from the train to the end of our journey at once. You must arrive at your destination, he announced, before the cosmic cycle reaches a certain point. As we left the train at Simla, Shananda led the way to a compound some distance further. It was surrounded by a high wall, and as we entered the gates, a caravan stood waiting for us, ready to leave immediately. The attendant brought our luggage, and we mounted small mountain ponies. Shananda gave the command to depart at once, and due to his mysterious influence, no one paid the slightest attention to us as we passed out of the city. We soon entered the mountain fastness, and for quite a while followed a beautiful stream. We kept on ascending for some distance, and then suddenly, passing behind a great wall of rock extending from the side of the cliff, we came to an opening leading directly into the side of the mountain. Shananda led the way without a moment's hesitation, and soon the entire place became illumined by a soft white light. From all appearances, we must have followed the bed of an underground watercourse. We entered this underground tunnel at noon and continued until 4:30 in the afternoon. As we emerged, we found ourselves in a beautiful sunlit valley, about 4 miles long and perhaps 2 miles at the widest point, with a lovely stream running through the center of the entire length. The climate was semi-tropical, and as the valley ran from east to west, it was filled with sunshine the greater part of the day. The north wall was a sheer cliff hundreds of feet high, and at the west end played a waterfall that looked like a bridal veil. The most rare, luscious fruits and vegetables grew in lavish abundance. I was wondering whether this was the place that Gaylord had described in telling us of his former experiences in India, when he answered my thought, "No, this is not the place I mentioned," he said. "We are far from there." As we came nearer a great building, I called out involuntarily to the others, "This is the Palace of..." And much to my surprise, Gaylord replied, "Yes, that is true. It is so known by all who enter this retreat." As we came to the entrance of the grounds, the beauty and grandeur of the entire setting sent a thrill through us of love and admiration for the place. We dismounted, and attendants took charge of the caravan, leading the animals to a group of smaller buildings half a mile away across the stream. Shananda led the way to the entrance, and as we came near, the beauty of the building held us spellbound. So magnificent was its architecture and workmanship. It was built of pure white onyx, 4 stories high, having a great dome in the center. As we came up the steps, the tones of a beautiful bell announced our arrival and welcomed us as guests of the retreat. In a moment, the great door opened and Nadja stood there to greet us. Shananda gave us one of his magic, radiant smiles in enjoyment of our surprise. "This is our home," he commented happily. "We welcome each of you, for it is your home, as long as you desire to stay, and whenever you wish to come. You will find silk robes and undergarments in your rooms," he continued, "which you are to wear while here. They will not soil nor wear out, so have no fear in wearing them." We were shown to our quarters on the second floor, overlooking the valley. They were a dream of beauty, exquisite, comfortable, and provided with every possible convenience and luxury. We refreshed ourselves for dinner and put on our robes as requested. We could not refrain from comparing them with the ones in which we had been traveling. The fabric of our wonderful new garments was a precipitated material of such quality as has never been produced by any physical means of manufacture. The fabric was unlike anything in the outside world. It was shimmering with a dazzling radiance, thick and soft as down inside. Each robe was worn with a girdle of the same material, heavily jeweled, and sandals of beautiful design were also provided to match each robe. The moment we placed these robes upon our bodies, a thrill of lightness passed through us, making us feel as if we were about to float into the air. The effect was amazing and instantaneous. We were happy beyond words as we contemplated the wonder of the whole experience and the marvelous power of these blessed ascended masters who are so transcendent in their power, and yet so humble and so natural in their loving association and friendship. While we were admiring our wonderful garments, the chimes sounded to announce dinner. We went at once to the reception room on the first floor, where the ladies of our group awaited us in similar robes. Shananda offered his arm to Pearl and led the way to what he said was their private dining room. It was large enough to seat at least 40 people in great comfort, and was magnificently decorated in white and violet. To our amazement, we noticed that the chairs were similar to those in the Diamond K Ranch in America, except that they were upholstered in violet silk velvet instead of blue. Towards one end of the room stood an enormous teakwood table, seating at least 20 people, heavily inlaid with a substance that looked like gold, but was in reality a precipitated material. Toward the other end of the room was a white onyx table of the same size, the top of which was inlaid in violet and gold, it too being a precipitated substance. Just inside the position where each plate would rest was a white rose with a delicate pink center, also inlaid on the violet part, and in the center of the table were two clasped hands of most beautiful gold inlay. It is utterly impossible to put into words the beauty and perfection of these things which are precipitated, for it is easy to produce effects entirely impossible in any other type of substance. We took our places around the table, and Shananda poured forth an adoration from the depth of his heart to the supreme presence of life. We in the outer world have no concept of the adoration these great ascended masters constantly pour out to the great giver of all good. Presently, 2 dark-skinned attendants appeared with the service, following with a dinner of wonderful nut loaf, luscious salad, hot rolls, and for dessert the most delicious fruit pudding I have ever tasted. The drink served with the meal was what Shananda called a golden wine. It was not intoxicating, but wonderfully invigorating. We shall breakfast at 9 and have dinner at 5:30, except on special occasions. All are to retire not later than 11 and arise at 6 o'clock in the morning. There will be containers filled with fresh fruit and honey cakes in your rooms every day, if at any time you should feel hungry. You are here to enter upon definite attunement and work that will fill your hearts with great joy, but at times it will demand your utmost strength. Tomorrow I shall show you the palace. I have received a communication announcing that tomorrow evening we shall be honored by the presence of the ascended Master Council, and as the guest of honor we shall have the great Divine Director. He is seldom seen, I assure you, even by those who are far advanced. I feel some tremendous special dispensation is at hand. So tonight retire early, and you will know for the first time what it means to rest in the embrace of light, a light which is rarely seen. Come now, and we shall go to the chamber of music, for Nadia has heard of your splendid voices, and would enjoy hearing you sing. When we entered the music room, we saw that their organ and piano were exact duplicates of those used in Saint Germain's retreat at the Cave of Symbols in America, and there were also several small musical instruments and a beautiful harp. Nadia seated herself at the piano and ran her fingers lightly over the keys, the instrument responding like a living thing to the magic of her touch. Nada and Rex sang their Arab love song, and the quartet followed with several numbers which we all greatly enjoyed. "Beloved friend," said Jananda, "you are wonderfully blessed with God's marvelous gifts, and through them you will be able to reach and bless many in your service to mankind." We asked if they would play for us, and they assented graciously. A glance passed between them, and Shananda stepped to the organ, seated himself at the instrument. They sat in meditation for a few moments, perfectly motionless, and then began. The vibrations in the atmosphere around us commenced to increase. Then the music surged forth like an ocean of sound, as if a great soul were entering the ecstasy of eternal freedom, and the legions of light from out infinity were welcoming the ascending one as a new sun rising within space. They modulated from one number to another until they had played 4 pieces, and by the time they finished, it seemed impossible to move, so great was our attunement and happiness. We tried to express our appreciation, gratitude, and joy, but it was impossible to put our feelings into words. Nadia understood and said humbly, "The mighty I Am Presence does all things, when there is no longer any obstruction between the human and the Master Self, for the outer is raised into the same vibratory action as the inner light." With a joyous good night and blessing to each other, we went to our rooms. I wondered if I should be able to sleep at all, so raised was the vibratory action of my body. But I dropped off before I knew it. I awakened in the morning with a very vivid consciousness of having gone forth in my finer body, and in doing so entered the mountain back of the Palace of Light through a secret, massive door. I then entered a series of caves where there was evidence of a very ancient civilization, very, very ancient, beyond anything of which we had ever heard in the outer world. When we met at breakfast, I asked Shananda the meaning of my experience. His face lighted up with that wonderful smile. "My good friend," he explained, "you have seen a great truth, and I assure you it is very real. At the appointed time, you shall see with your own eyes what you have seen in that experience with the inner sight. Your experience convinces me of the great importance of the visit from our guest of honor tonight. Truly, my beloved friends from America, you are ready for the full light. I only await the command of my superior to unfold to you many real wonders." Each one of you has gone through innumerable experiences, the full memory of which is about to be revealed. You are ready to leap forward in a way that will astound you. Come now, if you are ready, and I shall show you many of the marvels that we have in this retreat. We went first to the dome in the center of the building, and instead of it being an ordinary observatory, we found it to be what Shananda called a cosmic observatory. It was filled with many instruments of which the scientists of the outer world know nothing. One of these was an absorption reflector, which drew the image of the desired object through the etheric rays and then reflected it to the observer. It was a simple thing in its construction, but not in the quality of the substance of which the instrument was composed. Shananda explained at this point that the etheric rays and those which are being called the cosmic rays by the scientists of the outer world are not the same. There was another piece of mechanism called a light projector, by means of which it was possible to send either a life-giving or a disintegrating ray to an incredible distance. There was a radio television, so perfect that it is the marvel of all ages. After observing several other inventions in this room, we went downstairs to the next floor, where we saw great council chambers seating 700 people. The walls of this room were of a beautiful milk-white onyx, with the most marvelous blue trimmings. On the floor was a thick carpet of the same wonderful blue. There were no windows, and the room occupied almost the entire floor of the palace. Here again were beautiful chairs like those we had seen in the dining room, but upholstered in the soft, rich blue that trimmed the rest of the room. At the side was a dais, on which stood an altar and a golden chair. It was the most perfect thing one could imagine. The main part of the altar was precipitated gold, but the top was made of another precipitated substance, the shade of blue that borders onto violet, the substance itself emitting a silver radiance because of its luminosity. Around the edge was a border of gold, about 2 inches wide. The chair carried out the same design as that on the altar. The seat was upholstered in blue and had a high back extending well above the head. We then proceeded to the rooms on the ground level, which were devoted to electrical and chemical laboratories for experimental purposes. We were passing about the central point of the west wall on this floor when I stopped suddenly. "Here is the place where I entered the caves last night," I said to Shananda, while I was in my finer body. And with a very intense, serious expression on his face, he asked, "Do you see any door or entrance?" "No," I replied, "but it is there, and I know it." Then with a smile, he looked at me rather quizzically. "You are right," he remarked. "It is there, and I am glad you are certain in your convictions. Be patient, and you shall see all." We then returned to the great reception hall. "How is it," I asked, "that other students and people do not see the entrance to this place and find their way into such a paradise?" "If you were to go to the entrance," he replied, "you would not find an opening of any kind. Yesterday, after we entered, it was sealed again, so that it looks now like a solid wall. And so far as protection is concerned, it is as impenetrable as the wall of the mountain itself. For more than 20 centuries this valley has remained just as you see it today. Man can, by the use of the light rays or cosmic currents of light, through the mighty I Am Presence forever annihilate time, space, age, inharmony, and limitation of any kind. Discord is really the first wave or starting place of limitation. With perfect harmony maintained in the individual's consciousness, the door to God's kingdom of perfection, the activity of life without any limitation, stands wide open forever. Now come with me," he continued. I shall probably strain your credulity considerably, but you shall learn much if you so desire. All of you have heard about the Arabian Nights' tale of the magic carpet. I shall show you that the legend is true. He led the way out of the palace onto a beautiful lawn in front, where we saw what looked like a copper plate, about 14 feet square. The two youthful attendants brought out a gorgeous Persian silk rug of a most wonderful golden yellow. They covered the plate with it at Shenandoah's direction, and then he inquired, "Is anyone afraid to come with me?" No one answered, so we stepped upon it and gathered around him near the center. He immediately engaged us in a very animated conversation, which was quite unusual for him, and in a moment we all began to feel lighter and lighter. We glanced down, saw that we were leaving the earth, having risen about 20 feet in the air, and were floating smoothly along in the atmosphere. We continued to rise until we were about 50 feet above the ground, and then floated near the waterfall, which was glistening and glorious in its beauty. We continued on, drifting out over the valley and enjoying its enchanting loveliness. "Now, if you are ready," continued our host, "we shall view the mountains." We continued to rise until we were fully 11,000 feet above the palace. The scenery that lay below us was perfectly entrancing, and the peaks of the snow-capped mountains glistened in the sunlight like diamonds. We had become so absorbed in the view and Shenandoah's conversation that we had become oblivious to temperature and our mode of transportation, yet we were perfectly comfortable and did not feel any change of either altitude or climate, our host holding us all in his aura, which controlled everything within it, thus causing all to experience only his own glorious perfection. We circled around, returned to the palace grounds, and descended. As we stepped off the plate, our beloved host laughed heartily at our comments and surprise, enjoying greatly our exclamations of happiness. "My beloved friends," he explained, "I assure you there is nothing mysterious nor unnatural in what you have just experienced. It is all according to simple, immutable, eternal law, which every individual may set into action without any limit if he but will." "Why did we not feel the altitude?" someone asked. "In God's perfect kingdom, which means the I Am Presence, wherein there is only perfection, the feeling of harmony, there is no awareness of change in either altitude or temperature. Thoughts of perfection and feelings of harmony are simply rates of vibration that consciousness decrees into substance, which give to energy those qualities that manifest as perfection. Perfection cannot exist without love, for it is the highest rate of vibration in the universe, and it is the highest and most powerful activity, and controls forever all that is less than itself. Although you still have your physical bodies, while you are on the rug and in my aura, you could only have the conscious awareness of that perfection which my aura is at all times. For all ascended masters send out only the vibration that is the tone of divine love. Hence, all else must become obedient to our consciousness and the perfection of our love. The next step for you will be to learn how to turn the cosmic key and light your way wherever you wish to go. The key is within you. The light is within, and also all about you. Now return to your rooms and meditate upon the dazzling, fathomless mind of God, the mighty I Am Presence that is within you. We obeyed, and never have we found meditation so easy and so wonderful. At 5:30, beautiful chimes sounded throughout the building, announcing dinner. Shenandoah sat at the head of the table and Nadja at the opposite end. We became perfectly still for about 2 minutes. Then an oval of golden light with a shade of pink became visible and encircled the table, enveloping our heads throughout the entire meal. It produced the most wonderful feeling, and as we finished dinner, Shananda gave certain directions for us to follow. "Now return to your rooms," he said. "Lie flat on your backs with arms outstretched, and for an hour do not move a muscle. Then bathe, anoint your bodies with the liquid light which you will find provided for your use, and put on your precipitated garments." We obeyed, and when the liquid light touched our bodies, no words can ever tell the thrill of energy and the peace we experienced. As we finished and robed ourselves in the marvelous garments, we could see the soft white light radiate from our bodies for fully 3 feet, from which emanated a most wonderful rose fragrance, yet each one was distinctly individual in the particular quality of the rose odor poured forth. Just as we finished, the chimes sounded, calling us to the reception room. As we entered the room, we noticed the light about the ladies was similar to our own, except that around Leto, Electra, Gaylord, and his friend, the radiance was much brighter and extended farther than ours. "At 7 o'clock, said Shananda, we shall go to the great council chamber." He led the way and seated us facing the altar, placing Leto and Gaylord in the center, and the rest of us on each side of them. Shananda took the end seat on the right side, and Nadja the last one on the left. Seated directly behind us were our beloved master, Saint Germain, Nada, and Daniel Rayborn, surrounded by 200 of the ascended host. In a few moments, a soft white light with a touch of pink illumined the entire hall, and Shananda asked us to enter the deepest meditation of which we were capable, adoring the mighty I Am present within our own hearts. We became very still, and into that stillness entered deeper and deeper. We remained in this silence for some time, and then we heard the tones of a most wonderful voice that thrilled every atom of our minds and bodies. We opened our eyes and saw standing before us a marvelous being. This great, glorious presence was the embodiment in perfect balance of all transcendent qualities, both masculine and feminine, and held focused forever under his conscious command the wisdom and power of eternity. This majestic being stood fully 6 feet 4 inches in height, with wavy hair falling to the shoulders that looked like sunshine on gold. His robes glittered with points of light, like great jewels that flashed continually with the tremendous radiance of the power held under his control and obedient to his conscious direction. The girdle encircling the waist was a mass of sapphires and diamonds, and from it hung a panel to a few inches below the knees. This also was a mass of jewels. These jewels, as we afterward learned, were a condensation of light, and one can imagine the rays that blazed forth constantly, pouring out the tremendous power focused within them. This glorious, majestic being has become known to us as the great divine director. He is the great cosmic master under whom Jesus, Saint Germain, and the master Kutumi Lao Singh were trained. And his great love and far-reaching care often enfold many of their students now. No words in any language can do justice to this majestic being, and when his students speak of him, They are as humble before his mighty light as we feel before them. Oh, that the people of America and the world might know more of these great blessed beings, and share the joy that lifts me beyond the outer self. As he began speaking, he gave the cosmic sign of the ascended Master, saying, "Beloved children of eternal light, great is the rejoicing of the ascended host at the call of this meeting. These blessed ones before me are ready for our assistance, for their bodies can now be raised, and they shall enter their true freedom. Beloved Saint Germain, you have patiently, lovingly guided and instructed these children of light through the centuries, and your work shall bring its reward, for it is most nobly done. Is there another way?" Shananda immediately arose as our sponsor and replied, "Most High Master, I bear witness as to their readiness." And the great divine director continued, "Then we shall give them bodies such as have not been manifest before upon earth, that they may stand before the world a living example, revealing the fulfillment of the law of love and light. These shall be similar to the bodies of the ascended masters, yet they shall retain the appearance and some of the outer activities of the highest type of mankind. Under their control shall come the unlimited use of the cosmic energy and the direction of the mighty light rays. They shall minister unto humanity side by side with their beloved Master, who has so lovingly brought them to this point. Henceforth, I receive you all into my eternal embrace of light. The 2-year period that is usually required I now set aside. In 2 days you shall acquire what under the former activity would have taken 2 years to accomplish. Remember, in the I Am Presence there is no time nor space. It is all-wise and all-powerful, and through it we shall remove the atomic obstruction forever. Brother Shananda, take them to the Cave of Light. They are to remain there for 2 days. You are to anoint the masculine bodies 3 times a day with liquid light, and our sister Nadja will do the same for the feminine bodies." As the great divine director finished speaking, a ray of dazzling crystal white light streamed out from his forehead and swept the head of each one of the students. Then it withdrew into his body. Instantly, this was followed by a very intense, soft, golden ray that poured out from his heart, sweeping the heart area of those before him and again returning into his own body. He paused for a moment and seemed to record the strength of each one. From that he knew the intensity of their own light. The next instant, a dazzling white light blazed forth from his entire being, spreading into a fan-shaped radiance and encompassing all our bodies. Within this mighty stream were currents of energy flowing in at the feet and out at the top of the head of each student. Shadow after shadow passed off like sheaths, and the moment they left our bodies were consumed. The color of the light became a delicate pink, changing again into a soft gold, gradually blending into violet of a shade never seen in the outer world. Our inner sight and hearing were forever cleared and made our permanent servants. Then the light became such a dazzling white that we were compelled to close our eyes. Presently, by an inner command of the Presence, we opened them. The great being before us was almost terrifying in the majesty and power that poured out from him. The ascended guests had disappeared, and we were left alone with this dazzling celestial envoy of the Godhead. Then, in a voice as gentle as a mother caressing her child, he said, "You are all, now and forever, a part of my love, light, and wisdom. I shall meet you in the cave of light in an hour." Then he drew the stream of light into himself and disappeared. "Come," said Shananda. And as we rose to our feet, we had no consciousness of weight, and could have floated as easily as walked. We went to the lower floor, where I had passed through the door in my experience while in my finer body. In front of us was the door, just as I had seen it. Shananda placed his hand upon it. Slowly and steadily it opened, a massive, ponderous thing weighing many tons. We went into a narrow passage which suddenly became illumined by a soft white light that shone upon walls as smooth as though polished. We must have walked for nearly half a mile when we came to another door, less massive but wonderfully carved in very ancient writing. It opened at Shananda's touch, and we entered a cave of wondrous beauty, similar to the second chamber in the Cave of Symbols in America, only much larger. This cave also contained those same symbols, encrusted with that dazzling crystalline substance. Going still farther, we came to doors of solid gold. "Who seeks entrance here?" suddenly spoke a voice from the ethers. And Shananda answered instantly, "Children of the light, seeking more light, thy light and its perfect use." "Speak the name," again commanded the voice. Together we spoke the word. Then the doors of gold slowly began to open. Inside it looked like the white heat of a great furnace. And again the voice spoke, "All who enter here leave forever their earthly garments behind. Who dares to enter first?" "I will," Bob answered instantly, and the rest followed. 2 days and 2 nights later, we emerged from the eternal flame, wearing our new bodies of immortal endurance. The inharmony of earth can never register within these permanently. As we came back into the reception hall of the palace, the great divine director, with our beloved Saint Germain, Nora, and Daniel Rayborn, were there to greet us. The great being addressed us. "Now, your real service will begin. All but this brother," indicating me, "are to remain here in the Palace of Light for 1 year. You are now true messengers of the great White Brotherhood. Regarding your earthly affairs, your beloved Master Saint Germain will direct you." Making the Ascended Master's sign and salutation to the heart of the great central sun, he gave us his blessing. "Children of the diamond heart, I unfold you in the golden flame of my love. I protect you by the armor of my power. I raise you by the hand of your own divinity. I bless you with the fullness of my light. I give you the scepter of your own dominion. I seal you in the eternal freedom of your ascension. In that ecstasy supreme, the presence of the diamond heart, I am." A flash of blazing glory filled the room, quivered a moment, and he was gone. Saint Germain then turned to us and said, "Remember, beloved one, you are the Grail, the cup of light, from which all who are athirst may drink of the radiance of your being, for you are now the victory of love." The glory of love sings throughout infinity its paean of praise in continual adoration to life. Obey, my blessed children, its timeless fiat. Make the salutation of light to the heart of creation, and ever stand true to the immortal decree of love. O children of the light, O flames of the morning, call unto the secret love star. Let its rays weave for you an eternal garment of transcendent loveliness, and wear upon your heart the jewel of the sacred fire. Let its glory pour through you, that yours may be the scepter of power supreme. Speak only the decree of love, that perfection may be everywhere. Listen to the sound of its voice, that all may hear the song of joy. Gaze only upon its light, that the flame from the 7 Elohim may rest upon your forehead. Hold the cup of liquid light, and forever pour forth its life-giving essence. Then the rays from the diamond heart shall illumine your pathway, and when the Night Commander raises his sword of flame, you shall pass through, and stand face to face with your own divinity, upon the very altar of life. For within that Holy of Holies is the One, omnipotent, in blazing glory, your own beloved self, the magic presence, I am. In the crown of your everlasting victory shines a double rainbow, the result of love's attainment, encircled by all wisdom. Your royal robes of authority are the deeds of love, the rays of light from the magic presence, I am. These forever clothe all beings with their radiance, and are the fountain of eternal youth and beauty. Through them your scepter draws unto love its own, the fullness of the magic presence, I am. The rays from the 7 builders reach up and pour out their glistening streams of love's lightning, weaving great rivers of force into an imperishable garment. In blazing glory and dazzling beauty, the gift of the magic presence, I am. O children of the flame, sing the anthem of creation. It is the song of love that makes the music of the spheres ring throughout space in an adoration and hymn of praise, which is the very worship of life, the magic presence, I am. Let it flow through you in ever-expanding perfection. Be the ecstasy and glory of light unto all. Know the secret of the One. Waft the love breath of joy everywhere, and feel the great heart beat within the flame, the magic presence, I am.